After a long day of work where you are feeling overwhelmed, out of control, or just part of a larger machine, you might have come home to complain to say that you feel like a robot. You are going over the routines that others have put in place to be as effective as possible. This metaphor is something that most of us will instantly recognize because most of us have felt like this in one moment or another. It is interesting to realize that by saying we feel like a machine, we're actually referring to a very common human experience, that of oppression and marginalization. But why robots? Why do machines seem to be the perfect metaphor for elements of being human? Robots throughout the genre of science fiction have been an interesting presence. They are made by humans or sometimes human-like species and reflect something of their makers. They are designed to function in a specific intended way. But if robots are like a mirror, maybe a twisted and cracked one, but a mirror nonetheless, what do they reflect? More often than not, robots in science fiction are narratively created with the purpose of being metaphorical. Hans Blumberg, a German philosopher in this work from 1960, explains the purpose of metaphors. They are essentially thinking tools since they are never directly referring to reality. They are ideas explained through a certain lens that make us understand the world in a framed way by making complex concepts more accessible. So through what lenses can we look at robots and what does this mean? A robot is a machine, functional and effective. Their design is made with a specific purpose in mind. They are clearly not human and set apart from them. Their often several roles speak bookmarks about their only function in a society, to be subservient to their masters. Robots we see in films are often portrayed as a butler type, fulfilling a servant role as main and only purpose, or somewhat of a cute idiot or childlike being that know nothing of the world and need to be protected by their masters, the humans. A striking example of this, because it features both kinds of roles, is Star Wars. Many droids are seen as servants that fix the jobs that no human wants to do. They are treated as part of the environment or as tools, made to be used. Others are approached in a more lovable way. They are cared for, and the people attached to them often see them as companions. The existence of both concepts in a shared universe makes the difference between the server type and the pet type seem less great. While they can be loved, in a world where one is basically garbage, how can the other be seen as a truly fully formed being? It is because they are not. Even when the pet type might seem like an appreciation for robots, it really isn't. They are not fully beings that have multiple sides and shades to them. These roles are often approached with comedy where we laugh about their weirdness in a human world or we become uncomfortable about their positions. Will they rise above us? Or are we treating them in a way they deserve? Robots are presented as the other compared to the human self. The fact that they are not human allows us to mentally categorize them as a literal other. Human life is often undetermined. We do things that lead us to other things, but do we have a specific purpose other than just being? We don't know, and even after decades of arguing, people are still not agreeing on one idea. This fluidity of being is in stark contrast of the life of robots that have been predetermined from the start. We can clearly distinguish between them as fixed machines, the other, and ourselves as undetermined fluid beings, the self. In robot stories, these representations are often used to tell stories about personhood and the connection to repressive structures and separatist or racist structures. One of the classic examples is the story of the Bicentennial Man by Isaac Asimov from 1976. Andrew Martin, the robot protagonist of the story, is faced with the human prejudices and questions about his existence as a civic, legal, and social being. This story has strong connections to the ideas and narratives around slavery. By not acknowledging the personhood of Andrew, humans can cast him aside as the other. He is not the same as them and thus doesn't need to be treated as such. Many movies like I, Robot, Blade Runner, or even The Iron Giant deal with these themes of slavery. But this is by far not the oldest story about the robot body as othering force. In Metropolis, made by the famous Fritz Lang in 1936, the robot being and humans are pitted against each other in a narrative that reminds us of the Nazi ideology that was of course very on the foreground during this time. The workers experience horrible living conditions, but instead of focusing their angers against the leaders and institutions that make their lives miserable, the robot workers are used as a scapegoat. The paranoia that fuels the people makes them see the robotics as the outside and the cause of all their problems. By looking at and understanding these fictional beings, we start to see their role in a larger story of what it means to be a person that needs to be and function in their society. This leads us to the conclusion that robots, ideal vehicles for metaphors of the human existence, can both show us the good and the bad, the inclusive and the exclusive. Even by focusing on the marginalized metaphor that they can take on in this video, we can still conclude that they can make us look into a mirror. We might not like what we see, but this means we can change things. So when we look again, we like what we see staring back at us.